All right, let's dive into one of the world's most fascinating mysteries, Mount Kailash. This is a mountain that's absolutely steeped in some pretty wild theories and, at the same time, an incredible amount of spiritual reverence. So today, we're going to figure out exactly why.
So right out the bat, here is the central puzzle that gets everyone hooked. I mean, think about it. Thousands of people have stood on top of Mount Everest, the tallest peak in the world. But Mount Kailash, which is way, way shorter, remains completely unclimbed. So what's the deal? What is stopping people?
Well, if you do a quick search online, whoa, the stuff you'll find is just wild. There are claims it's a time machine, stories about climbers aging decades in just a few days, theories that it's actually a giant, hollow, man-made pyramid, or that it's protected by some mysterious, invisible force. Yeah, we've definitely got some myths to unpack here.
But hold on. Before we get into all that crazy stuff, we absolutely have to understand the reality of this place. And that reality starts with just how spiritually important this mountain is. This isn't just a pile of rocks. For literally billions of people, this is a deeply sacred place. Geographically, it's already incredible. It's located in Tibet, and its shape is, well, it's almost a perfect pyramid. You just don't see that in nature. And get this, its four faces are almost perfectly aligned with the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. Kind of weird, right?
But what really gives Kailash its unique power is that it's not just sacred to one religion. No, it's a holy center for four different major religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and the ancient Tibetan religion of Bone. It's basically the spiritual axis of Asia.
And for each one of these faiths, Kailash is absolutely central. For Hindus, it's the home of Lord Shiva. For Buddhists, it's where the deity Chekasamvara resides. Jains believe it's the very spot where their first great teacher achieved enlightenment. And for followers of Bun, it's literally the point where heaven connects to earth.
Okay, so now that we get just how sacred this place is, let's circle back to those wild legends we mentioned. It's time for a little fact-checking to separate the myths from the actual mountain.
All right, this is probably the most famous story you'll hear. The claim, usually tied to a Russian doctor named Ernst Muldashev, is that a group of Siberian climbers tried to get up the mountain, and when they came back, they aged decades in just a single year, and then died. It's a terrifying, really memorable story.
But here's the thing, it's just that, a story. There is zero proof any of this ever happened. No names, no dates, no official records, nothing. In fact, the Russian Mountaineering Federation has gone on record stating that, nope, an expedition like that never even took place. The story is a total fabrication.
And this is a perfect example of why you've got to check your sources. The man behind a lot of these myths, Dr. Muldashev, he was an eye surgeon, not a physicist or a geologist. This is also the same man who claimed he found Dracula's castle and believed in mermaids and vampires. So, when the source of the claim is that fantastical, the claims themselves start to look a little shaky.
Okay, what about that other popular internet theory? The one that claims Kailash is in some mathematically perfect location, exactly 6,666 kilometers from the North Pole and Stonehenge. Sounds pretty convincing, right? Well, when you actually check the real distances, the numbers just don't quite add up. They're close enough to make a good story, but they're not exact.
Now let's talk about a real natural wonder near Kailash that often fuels these myths. Right next to each other, you have two lakes. One is Mansarovar, a freshwater lake just teeming with life, and the other is Rakshastal, the demon lake, a saltwater lake where almost nothing grows. One is seen as light, the other as darkness. So how can two lakes, side by side, be so incredibly different?
Well, the explanation is perfectly scientific. Rakshastal is what's called an endorheic, or landlocked lake, meaning it has no outlet. So for centuries, water flows in and then evaporates, but all the salts and minerals, they get left behind. Over thousands of years, that concentration builds up and up, making the water too salty for life. Meanwhile, nearby Mansarovar does have an outflow, and that's what keeps its water fresh. Simple as that.
So if it's not a mysterious force, not a time warp, not aliens, what is the real reason no one has ever stood on the summit of Mount Kailash? Let's finally get to the heart of it.
Now, don't get me wrong, the mountain is physically very, very challenging. Early explorers in the 1920s talked about sheer rock faces and just terrible, unpredictable weather. One even called it utterly unclimbable. But let's be honest, modern mountaineering has overcome far greater obstacles. The physical difficulty, that is not the main reason it remains unclimbed.
And this quote from the absolute legend Reinhold Messner really gets to the true obstacle. This guy is arguably the greatest mountaineer in history, the first person to climb all 14 peaks over 8,000 meters. And his perspective completely shifts the conversation from a physical challenge to a deeply ethical one.
So check this out. In 1985, Messner, the most qualified person on the entire planet to climb Kailash, was given official permission by the Chinese government to make the first ascent, and he turned it down. He refused to climb out of a profound respect for the beliefs of millions of people.
Messner's decision set a hugely powerful precedent. So later, in 2001, when a Spanish team got a permit, the international backlash was so massive that they had to cancel their expedition. And in response to this global outcry, the Chinese government did something pretty remarkable. They officially and permanently banned all climbing on Mount Kailash.
And this brings us to the real miracle of Kailash. It's not what the myths and legends claim it is. The wonder here is something far more human.
So now there is no mysterious energy field or supernatural guardian protecting the summit. The force that stops people from climbing isn't invisible at all.
It's us. The true miracle is a collective human choice. It's the powerful, unified decision of mountaineers, of governments, of people from all over the world to honor a sacred place instead of just planting a flag on it. The real wonder is a simple act of restraint and respect.
And that leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? In an age where we've mapped the deepest oceans and walked on the moon, where we're always trying to conquer that next frontier, what does it mean for us, as a species, to collectively agree that something should just be left alone, revered from a distance? What is the value of leaving something sacred?